Welcome to Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. I'm your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. And joining me, as always, my co-host, Stephen Young of RotoGrinders, better known as Stevie TPFL. And this week, we're talking bets for the Coke Zero Sugar 400 at Daytona here on Running Hot. Last weekend at Richmond, Austin Dillon won for the second year in a row. This year, without the race-ending controversy of wrecking multiple drivers, which prevented him last year from getting in the playoffs. This year, all clean, all fair and square. Austin Dillon locks himself into the playoffs with a win and in effort, beating Alex Bowman and Ryan Blaney, who finished second and third. Stevie, thoughts on Richmond?
I liked it. It was a short flat where we actually saw tires matter. I mean, if you manage your tires early in the run, you were able to do something at the end of the run. We had a lot of clean racing, which I know a lot of people like, accidents and cautions and restarts. I'm a fan of racing. So, I like when we get these cleaner races where drivers have to have skill to win. Austin Dillon managed his stuff and was still fast. Ryan Blaney did not manage his stuff and fell off a lot at the end of the run on that last run. So it came down to pit crew skill, driver skill, all kinds of stuff. I mean, I think Denny had one of the best cars last weekend and just they couldn't stop messing up. So, Austin's team executed perfectly. He executed perfectly as a driver. And we clap our hands and say, you did it right this time. I mean, we know he had a fast car last year. That end of the race stuff kind of put a black eye on it all, but he legitly was the best car. And I think it's really cool that, the 3 car is in the playoffs. The 3 car was back in victory lane. I know you and I are both old school NASCAR fans. So, it's hard not to like seeing the 3 car win a race.
Absolutely. And, I think aside from maybe Bubba Wallace, I think the best driver won the race. You could argue that Bubba arguably had the best car there for most of that race, but I think he and Austin Dillon were the 2 best. And, Bubba Wallace, of course, losing a tire on pit road. It wasn't secured firmly by the pit crew there, which cost him a really strong finish, one where he could have been a race winning contender. One thing I will say, you talked about the pit crews, you talked about the drivers. The strategy was so important too. And what I noticed was short pitting. Pitting early in the window was so much better because you could defend that on a long green flag run a lot better than, if you didn't. And that was evident early on with Kyle Larson being one of the first to pit in stage 1. He started 30th. He fell back to 33rd even when he came in a pit. And then he ended stage 1 inside the top 16 or 17 because he pitted early. And we saw all those guys pitting early were able to make up time. And yeah, maybe you sacrifice a few laps on your tires towards the end of a stint, but if it stays green, it kind of levels out, so you keep your track position. And Austin Dillon on that final stint pitted early, gapped Ryan Blaney by almost 8 seconds to start with. And yeah, Blaney closed it to about 3 seconds, but then it leveled out, and actually Blaney ended up getting worse in that long run, as you talked about. And Alex Bowman was really good on the long run, but he also late pitted and just didn't quite have the track position and the tires to overcome Austin Dillon there at the end. Had that race gone a little bit longer, I think Alex Bowman wins, but because of this massive tire fall off, we're not getting really long stints at Richmond anymore. We're talking 55 lap stints being around the longest we saw at all the whole race. So that was a really interesting race, and I think there's some strategy takeaways for the next time we come to Richmond with this tire combination. But this week, we are on to Daytona. There's a lot to talk about, Stevie, but the first thing we are going to talk about before we actually analyze Daytona itself is the playoff picture. We mentioned Austin Dillon locking himself in. That makes the playoff picture pretty clear. Right now, Alex Bowman is the driver. That is the last car in. He is 40 points to the good on Chris Buescher, who is the first car out. So barring something crazy, it's essentially win and in if you're Chris Buescher on back. And if we don't get a new winner, it's almost essentially Alex Bowman and Tyler Reddick will be good here on points. There are some weird scenarios where Alex Bowman could overtake Tyler Reddick and we get a new winner and Reddick's out. Or Chris Buescher overtakes Alex Bowman and we get a new winner and Bowman's out with new or non-new winners. But I think the 85th percentile plus scenario is the playoff picture is winning in if you're below Chris Buescher or below, and if you're Alex Bowman, Tyler Reddick above, either win yourself or hope you don't get a new winner, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're not Tyler Reddick, you have to win this race. I mean, even if you're Alex Bowman, I feel like you are on the mindset of I have to win this race. He has such a huge gap to Buescher, like you said, it's like what 60 points or something from Bowman to Buescher. So Buescher, like realistically, cannot catch Alex Bowman. So if you're Alex Bowman, you're winning the race because you know that like the gap that you have to clear to get to Reddick, like Reddick would have to have like an engine issue in the first stage of the race for you to even have a remote chance to point your way in over Tyler Reddick. So I think if you're Alex Bowman down, like you said, you're winning. Like that's the only way you know you're making the playoffs. I mean, if you're Alex Bowman, you cannot count
Yeah.
on points. I mean, if you're Alex Bowman and you got like a William Byron or a Chase Elliott in front of you at the end of the race, you push them to the win because you're getting into the playoffs. You're not wrecking or anything crazy. I mean, so I think there's all different kinds of strategies, and some of my bets are going to talk about that as well. But I think if you're Alex Bowman, unless you have a teammate or a winner in front of you, you got to win this race.
Yeah, and you're right. It's 60-point gap. For some reason, I was thinking 40-point gap. There is a scenario where I think Buescher could tie Alex Bowman on points if he wins every stage and wins the race and gets the fastest lap, and Bowman finishes dead last. But
Yeah.
even then, Alex Bowman would win the tiebreaker. So Alex Bowman, yeah, he just needs to hope there's no new winner. Chris Buescher on back needs to win. Alex Bowman, to prevent a new winner, go win the race yourself, exactly as you said. And Tyler Reddick just kind of has to not fall behind Alex Bowman in points. There is a 29-point gap there between Alex Bowman and Tyler Reddick. So that kind of sets the stage for Daytona. Daytona, of course, a 2.5-mile super speedway. It's got some pretty decent banking in the corners, which differs it a lot from the other 2.5-mile tracks of Pocono and Indianapolis, which are flat tracks. They don't use the drafting package at Indianapolis and Pocono, so those are not comparable tracks. Daytona does use the drafting package, so of course, it being one of the two big super speedways along with Talladega tends to be where we get the most comparable style of racing. Now, of course, there's another drafting track, the 1.5-mile oval of Atlanta, a little bit different simply because it's smaller, it's tighter, handling matters, quite a bit at Atlanta, and some tire fall off. Daytona handling matters, but it's certainly a lot less than Atlanta, but it is a little more than Talladega. So talk about racing at Daytona, Steve.
I mean, racing at Daytona and Talladega have changed a little bit, but racing at Daytona, with it being the last race of the season, is going to be wild. I mean, I think
Yep.
that you're going to see aggressiveness from stage one to the end of the race. I don't think it's going to be fuel savings as much as we've seen in the past. I think it's going to be, I need to be up front. If you are Alex Bowman and down, you're going to be in that mindset of, I need to be up front because it's so hard to pass at Daytona and Talladega compared to where it was years ago. I mean, the passing that we've seen this year and last year at Talladega and Daytona has really just been these guys are saving fuel. The third lane opens up and they try to go forward, not saving fuel. So I think racing at Daytona has changed a lot with this next gen car. But I think the racing at Daytona this weekend in particular is different than what we saw at the Daytona 500. So I think that's the biggest difference between this race and Daytona. Daytona, first race of the year. Let's just make sure we're having, we're there at the end. This weekend is I need to be up front. I need to be in a position to win this race.
Yeah, and there's more desperation this week than Daytona as well. So in the Coke Zero Sugar 400, we tend to see even more chaos than in Daytona, where every driver wants to win the Daytona 500, right? And we do see chaos at the end of those races. But with the threat of rain, possibly and even if not, just the fact that you need to be positioned up front, there's going to be a lot more aggression, I think, than the Daytona 500 because every driver from Chris Buescher on back is in desperation mode. And even Alex Bowman could be in potentially desperation mode. Maybe even Tyler Reddick, right? If things get crazy, Tyler Reddick could be in desperation mode. So, we're talking about the fact that there is a lot of scenarios here that could play out, and we have nearly the whole field in desperation mode. A lot of drivers that are locked in that would love 5 extra playoff points for winning the race or winning a stage for an extra playoff point. So I think this is just going to be a dogfight, an absolute dogfight. I think this is going to be a race where there's not much give and take, especially after the first stage. When we get to that second stage, especially if there's the threat of rain coming toward halfway or after halfway, it's going to just be mass, just desperation mode, a lot of aggression, and I think it's going to be a must-watch race under the lights on a Saturday night. So, Stevie, the other thing I want to talk about is team and teammate dynamics because of this playoff scenario. We have, let's look at Joe Gibbs Racing. They have 3 of their 4 drivers locked in. The only one that's not is Ty Gibbs. Is there any thought around them pushing Ty Gibbs in? And then there's a different team, RFK Racing, which has all of their drivers on the outside looking in, all of whom are capable of winning this race. What is their teammate dynamics like? And just across the field, what do you think these dynamics, how do they kind of play out?
I think the Ford camp in particular is going to be very RFK focused this weekend. Just Penske, I mean, really, Josh Berry, they're all in. So where can we help Ford? And I think the Ford focus is going to be on RFK. So we'll start there. I think that Ford will be pushing RFK. I think RFK will be pushing RFK. I think from what we've heard in the past from Brad Keselowski is, help each other until the last lap and then try to make a pass. So I think that's what you'll see in the RFK camp. I think the JGR situation is very interesting because I do think like they might be stacking up behind Ty Gibbs and stacking up behind Tyler Reddick a little bit more than usual this weekend, even like an Eric Jones. But I don't feel like Legacy is as close to JGR as 2311. So I think that the Toyota focus this weekend is probably Ty Gibbs and Tyler Reddick. So if I'm Tyler Reddick, by the way, I put Alex Bowman in my front bumper and I push him all race. That's what I do. But hey, it always doesn't work out that way. And then in the Hendrick camp, the Chevy camp is interesting because, I mean, you have Kyle Busch, who we have Austin Hill coming into an RCR car this weekend. Specific reason to help Kyle Busch. Let's be honest. We know why Austin Hill's in the car this weekend. And Austin Dillon just won. So the focus, I think, on the RCR side is let's get Kyle Busch into the playoffs. And then on the Hendrick camp is, I mean, it's Alex Bowman. Hendrick is one of the biggest organizations in motorsports. Like, we want all of our drivers in. So that's where it gets interesting in the Chevy camp compared to like Ford. I think Ford's focus is clear. I think Toyota's focus is definitely Ty Gibbs and Tyler Reddick, where I think Chevy, who's the focus? I mean, it's Kyle Busch, AJ Allmendinger's back here, Carson Hocevar, young driver, Michael McDowell. Like, there's so many different ways in the Chevy camp where it's like, I think Chevy might be kind of split a little bit more than typical drafting type tracks this weekend.
Yeah, and I agree with you with all of that. I wouldn't say I think the whole Ford camp is focused on RFK because there's a lot of Ford drivers, namely Front Row Motorsports. They don't have a win. They want to get one of their drivers into the playoffs. Yeah. I don't think they're going to be pushing RFK to the win here. I don't think, Cole Custer's an RFK affiliate, so I think he could be in that camp. But I think Front Row Motorsports is going to be possibly on their own program. Yeah, working with the Fords, but push comes to shove, I don't think they're pushing RFK to the win. And, especially a driver like Noah Gragson, we know, not in a bad way, but he's a selfish driver. He is aggressive. Yep. He's going to take that win for himself. Teammates be damned. And certainly Todd Gilliland is a great super speedway racer. Zane Smith has won multiple truck races at Daytona. So I think that FRM group could be on a different plan there as well, splitting the Ford camp a little bit. And you make a really interesting point. The best way for Tyler Reddick to ensure he gets in the playoffs is have Alex Bowman on his front bumper, because then you don't fall behind him in points. Even if Alex Bowman wins, you're still good. So I think that's an interesting dynamic there as well. But any other intangibles before we dive into these bets?
I mean, you kind of talked about it already, but rain. I live 20 minutes from Daytona. I coach in Daytona, and it rains every day. So rain, that is the biggest one, because yeah, we all want to see this race go full, but does the rain push it to a Sunday day race? That definitely changes handling of the race cars a little bit more than a night race. So that's something you just got to pay attention to. I mean, in the betting world, you might just jump on some other stuff if the race moves or that kind of stuff, or like your in race betting might be a little bit differently. But like, doesn't really change too much early week stuff for me. Rain wise, I mean, it's Florida. It's going to rain. It's just, do we get a window to race in or not? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
When does that rain hit, right? That's the biggest
yeah,
question. And as of right now, in terms of Saturday, when the race is scheduled, it looks like it'll come before or towards the start of the race, which should push it back a little, but then they get the full thing in. But forecasts can always shift and change, especially like you said in Daytona. But rain is part of a handicap of one of my bets. So I think that's a great intangible to have there as well. One other intangible for me, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Christopher Bell does late in this race. Obviously, if Ty Gibbs is out and Tyler Reddick is out or nowhere near him, Christopher Bell can go for that win. The biggest problem with Christopher Bell for me was he could not take a push at Daytona. He got shoved with what seemed like normal pushes, maybe kind of aggressive late, but not like anything we haven't seen, and that car could not take a push. So I'm a little worried about his car's ability to take a push if what we saw at the first Daytona comes true at the second Daytona race. But it is time to dive into those bets. As always, we're going to drive through the race stage by stage, giving our shorter odds bet in stage 1 and a longer odds bet in stage 2. Finally, we'll drive through stage 3 and end up in victory lane with our combined favorite bet. So let's throw the green flag on the final race of the regular season, the Coke Zero Sugar 400, and fire off for stage 1. All right, first stage, Stevie, you alluded to this driver a little bit earlier as far as the RCR camp. What do you got here?
yeah, I'm going to go to Austin Hill for a top 10 at plus 400. And I know he's run 3 super speedway races in the Cup Series already, but this is a guy that has just been outstanding in the Xfinity Series on the super speedway drafting type of track. So Austin Hill, I mean, they're fielding basically a third car for him this weekend. And I think the focus, sometimes we see like the Beard Motorsports, but like the fact that they're like entering this car as an RCR car, like you have to think that like Richard Childress, I mean, he at the time they entered this car, they probably like, we need 2 drivers to get in the playoffs. One of the drivers got in last weekend with Austin Dillon winning that race. So now the focus for RCR is like, hey, let's get Kyle Busch in the playoffs. And we hear Austin Dillon talk family, and we hear him even in his post-race interview last week when he won the race. Like, he's still very family RCR oriented. So I feel like if Austin Dillon can push Kyle Busch to a win this weekend and they both can make the playoffs, that's just huge for the organization. And I think Austin Dillon is not proud enough not to do that. So I think that Austin would push Kyle, and that's where Austin Hill comes in too. Austin Hill is a very good pusher. I don't necessarily need Austin Hill to win the race. Like, you could bet his outright at a long odds. We're going to talk about long odd bets all show, but I think Austin Hill sits back, stays clean he's not racing for points. And then at the end of this race, Austin Hill, Austin Dillon focused on Kyle Busch. And if they're focused on Kyle Busch and he's up there racing for a win, which he's done with RCR at Talladega already, then Austin Hill benefits from getting that top 10, helping that teammates. So that's kind of my thought process here. Like, I think Austin Hill is going to be pushing and helping Kyle Busch, and that gives him the opportunity to pick up this top 10 at 4-1.
Yeah, and honestly, any good car probably should be a bet at 4-1 for a top 10 finish. Just with the nature of this race, with the chaos of this race. I threw some stats out there on X, on Twitter, whatever you want to call it these days, that only 46.4% of cars have finished on the lead lap in the Daytona 2, the Coke Zero Sugar 400 race, since they moved it to just before the playoffs in 2020. So that is an average of 17 or 18 cars in a 40-car field. All of a sudden, you just need to beat half the field if you're still alive at that point in the race. So any good car at 4-1, you should be betting. And honestly, I even like Cody Ware at 4-1 for a top 10 finish. He's finished inside the top 10 both times he has run this race in the next gen car, right? And we're talking about a Rick Ware racing car. And his strategy is different. Hang back, wait for the field to wreck, and then, be one of the 15 or 16, 18 cars in the lead lap and try to beat half of them. So absolutely, Austin Hill, there's multiple ways for him to get this top 10 bet. So Austin Hill, top 10, 4-1 is Stevie's stage 1 pick. For my stage 1 pick, we're going to talk about a lot of long shots, but I'm actually going to talk about a minus odds bet, Stevie. Think about that, a minus odds bet at Daytona. When have I ever done that? But this is the perfect spot to do it. I'm going to go with the most laps led by any driver. Under 44.5, you can get that at Bet365, or even under 43.5, minus 115 at Caesars, minus 125 at ESPN Bet at the time we're recording this around midday on Wednesday. And the reason is simple. If you look at the 5 Daytona races that we just talked about, the Coke Zero Sugar 400, since it moved to just before the playoffs, the under hit in 4 of 5 of these, despite 4 out of the 5 also going into overtime, meaning more than the 160 laps, right? We've seen as much as 165 laps. And the one under that didn't hit was 2023 when Chase Briscoe led 67. Other than that, no driver has led more than 37 laps in a Coke Zero Sugar 400 out of the last 5 of these. We also talked about the rain in the forecast. If that somehow shortens the race, that shortens the number of available laps, which, shortens the chances that a driver leads more than 43.5 or more than 44.5. And even if it doesn't shorten the race, just a potential threat of rain near or after halfway will ramp up the intensity, because you never know when the rain's going to hit. That could be the end of the race. You want to be out front if the rain hits, barring the whole field wrecking because of the rain, like we saw a couple of years ago in this race. So it's going to ramp up the intensity. We're not going to see the riding around as much if the rain could hit at any moment. I mean, if you're RFK and the rain is about to come and it looks like it could be race-ending rain, what do? Do you all of a sudden work with each other still? Or, I mean, it's crazy. So that also just lowers the chances that we're just riding around. Now, we're early in the week. We don't know if rain's going to be a threat or not, but current forecast, like I said, looks like it probably won't be, but these things always shift. And this has to be part of the handicap, because we've already handicapped extra laps, overtime, and we've still gone under in 4 or 5 of these. But we also need to handicap the fact that there could be fewer laps, which just helps this bet even more. So if we look at the most laps led by any driver in these 5 races, we've had 31, 34, 36, 37, and 67. So the average is 43.5 where this line is set. But the median, which is the 50-50 number, is 36. So sportsbooks have been setting on the average rather than setting on the median. My simulations make this around 36.5 would be the even money point. So I'd bet this down to like 37.5 at minus 115 or 36.5 at even money. If you have it at 43.5, this is good to down to like minus 200. So I love this bet, minus odds bet at Daytona, Stevie.
So I think at the end of the day, I don't really have much to add outside of everything. I think you brought up all the great points when talking about this. But the one thing that I will say, with this next-gen car at super speedway races, nobody wants to be the leader. That's all I'm going to say. No one wants to lead 50 laps, 60 laps, 70 laps because of how much fuel. And if you go out and lead all of stage 1, you're probably going to be in the back of the pack the rest of the race because you're playing catch up on fuel the rest of the race. So no one wants to lead. I mean, I'm going to simplify your bet for everybody. No one wants to be the leader. No one wants to lead 45 laps. So I'm in. I like this.
Yeah, so a lot of options available for this bet. So hopefully you all have a sportsbook that has this one. So to recap, stage 1, Stevie has Austin Hill for a top 10 finish at 4-1. I've got most laps led by any driver under 44.5, under 43.5, whatever you want to take it. I love those lines. So we're going to throw the green and white checkered on stage 1. Come in for hopefully a short pit stop because it's Daytona. And before we fire off for stage 2, I want to remind you all, football season is here, and we've got some huge improvements and updates coming on the award-winning Action Network app, which we're very excited to discuss in the weeks ahead. But to get the most out of the app, you'll still need to be an Action Pro subscriber. It's only with Action Pro you get real-time pick alerts from myself and the entire Action Network team of experts. Plus, you can access pro projections powered by Sean Kerner and our predictive analytics team, which, hey, I'm a part of that as well. Plus a ton of other benefits. And right now, Running Hot listeners can save $20 off the annual price of Action Pro. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro and use code POD20. That's actionnetwork.com/pro and use code POD20. That's POD20 for $20 off the annual price of Action Pro. All right, one stage down. We got 2 to go. Stevie, we're going to throw the green flag on stage 2, and this is where we're getting into the outright bets, the longer odds bets. What do you got?
Yeah, so when I was looking at this earlier in the week, I was like, do I bet these 3 drivers individually or do I bet the team? And I ended up deciding to bet these 3 drivers individually instead of betting the team because I just liked how it looked if Buescher or Priest wins. So what I'm doing is I want to bet all 3 of these. I don't want to just bet one of these. I want to bet Brad Keselowski, Chris Buescher, and Ryan Priest to win the race. BK is 13-1 at Hard Rock. Buescher is 20-1 at Hard Rock. Priest is 25-1 at Hard Rock. There are much better odds on other books. I live in Florida. I have one option. So my thought process is going back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show. I think Ford, especially Penske, is going to be helping RFK, and the focus is going to be on RFK this week. They want to get one of these cars in. They've had plenty of speed this year. They should not be in this position where they're in right now with all 3 cars below the cutoff line, in my opinion. The speed backs it up too. So you have 2 really good super speedway racers, and we don't know what Ryan Priest is yet because he always flips. And I mean that not jokingly because it is serious, but so you have 2 really good speedway racers, and you have 3 cars at Daytona and Talladega that probably have been the best 3 pushers at both races this year. So I love this just in general because now we're getting great pushers. Brad Keselowski is incredible at controlling the field. And I think these 3 guys work together until 10 to go or until the rain comes, like you said. So we're getting a team of these 3 drivers that should work together. They're fast. Fords have been incredibly fast on speedway races. They're some of the best pushers. Like, it just makes sense to bet all 3 of them and just kind of hope that. Personally, I'm hoping that Buescher or Priest wins instead of BK because he's shorter odds, but I want to include Brad Keselowski because, I would not be shocked if Brad wins too. So most books you can find RFK to win around 450 to 550. I personally just like betting all 3 outrights. So that's what I did. But it's just it's an RFK basically to win type of bet. So that's where I'm at. I like the RFK cars. If you want to bet Ford to win, that's fine if you don't want to go longer odds, but I like betting longer odd bets at Daytona. So RFK is what I'm on here. Brad, Buescher, Priest to win. Betting all 3, not just one individually.
Yeah, there's no doubt these cars are going to be some of the best cars out there. My only pushback, and you know this, Stevie, is I just can't bet 13-1 at a chaos race. It's just too short for me. And if we look at the history of Daytona 500s and Coke Zero Sugar 400s, the winners tend to be longer odds. We get some shorter odds, but if you lump, let's say, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Austin Cindric, Brad Keselowski, William Byron, and Chase Elliott together, they don't win 1 out of 16 of their starts at these races, or 1 out of 15, let's say. So that's my only pushback. That the other thing is we're just going to see so much potential chaos in this race. These 3 cars could get split up very easily. They could either be caught up in some of these big ones or just split up with the way the draft goes. There is teammate dynamics that absolutely come into play, and I fully agree they're going to be there. I just personally, I would take Buescher and Priest and just leave off BK, and that's what I would do. But I totally get it because we know BK is going to be one of the best out there. And it's a little FOMO, right? Like, if Brad Keselowski wins, you don't want to be missing out on that. So I totally agree with you there.
Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, this makes sense. So Stevie taking the RFK drivers individually for his stage 2 bets. For my stage 2 bet, I just talked about it, right? I have a harder time betting shorter odds bets. I tend to gravitate towards these longer odds bets. We've seen Austin Dillon win this race when he was 50 or 60 to 1. We've seen Harrison Burton win this race last year when he was 100 to 1. I'm going to take these long shot bets, especially some of these drivers that I think have been very good at super speedways. So if you've been following me in the Action Network app, you've seen what I've already bet. All of these odds have shortened from what I bet them at, but I'd still bet them at these odds. Got Noah Gragson 55 to 1. Justin Haley 65 to 1, Ty Dillon 80 to 1, still has the best numbers out there. And I'm sure I will have a few more long shot bets in the Action Network app as the week progresses. So make sure you're following me there on the Action Network app at Nick_Giffen. But look, Noah Gragson, I talked about it. He's selfish. He's going to go out and try to take this win if he's in position to. He has been in position to get multiple super speedway wins in the Cup Series. It just hasn't worked out. And I think he's going to absolutely try to be selfish and take this win. Look, I mean, careers could be on the line here, Stevie. We're talking driver Noah Gragson, who's had a horrible year. He's not really been amazing in the Cup Series, even though he's had some flashes of brilliance. But he's dead last out of the 3 FRM cars right now in terms of points. He needs a win. So does Justin Haley. Justin Haley has, been rumored. Not really sure how founded those rumors are, but rumored to potentially be on the hot seat in that 7 car, even though he's under contract for next year. And 65-1. And we've seen him. I mean, he was one of the drivers leading this race when that big rainstorm hit in 2022 that wiped out the whole field. So we know he can get it done. And Ty Dillon, I really like Ty Dillon. This actually might be my favorite of these 3 long shots at 80-1. I got him 100-1 earlier in the week, but Ty Dillon has secretly been a weapon at super speedways this year. He nearly won his dual race. If he and AJ Allmendinger just lined up a little bit better with that push, Ty Dillon would have won his dual race at Daytona to start the season. And he's been in the hunt late in at least one other drafting track race this year. Led a bunch of laps. I think it was maybe Talladega, or was near the front, I should say, for a bunch at Talladega. So I think he's been a secret weapon. And those Kaulig cars, they kind of know what to do at super speedways. AJ Allmendinger as well. Justin Haley Backwood was in that Kaulig car. So he's a little bit of a secret weapon to me and might actually be my favorite of the long shots. So I'm sprinkling some long shots. I always do that at Daytona, especially the Chaos Daytona race, the second one. What do you think, Stevie?
Yeah, I mean, I've already bet 2 of these 3. So I'm in. I bet Haley, and before the show, you talked me into betting Ty Dillon. So I haven't bet Gragson. I get it. I think the Ford Focus, like I said, and like it's just my personal opinion. I think the Ford Focus is going to be more on RFK, but we love aggressive drivers. So yeah, if you're going to bet Gragson, this would be the type of race to bet him at. But yeah, I mean, personally, I like these. I like betting long odds. I think this race is going to be chaos. So this is the race where I feel like this is the race where long odds hits more than any other race that we go to this year, because this race is like, it's so chaotic in easy terms. It's just so chaotic because it's the last race to make the playoffs, and now it's back in that last race spot, and just anything can happen.
Absolutely. Anything really can happen. And even if we just look over the course of the season, right? We had Josh Berry win in Las Vegas. He was longer than 30, 35, 40-1 at that point in the season. We've had Austin Dillon. He was just 50 or 60-1 at Open this past weekend for Richmond, even though he was the defending race winner. We've had, for example, Bubba Wallace was 40-1 at Open for the Indy Brickyard 400. So you can get some long shots over the course of a 36 race season. You're probably going to have a couple of 30, 40, 50 plus long shots. And like you said, this is probably the most likely race to have a long shot winner. So sprinkle the long shots, whatever you like. I can't really argue it. I mean, hey, even Cole Custer at 70-1 might not be a bad bet. He was pushing Christopher Bell at the end for the race win there on one of those late restarts in the Daytona 500. I wouldn't rule out anybody in a good car at long odds. So stage 2, Stevie has the RFK cars individually, Brad Keselowski, Chris Buescher, and Ryan Preece to win. I've got a few long shots starting with Noah Gragson, Justin Haley, and Ty Dillon. So that'll wrap it up for stage 2. We're going to also drive through stage 3, cross the finish line, take the checkered flag, and drive into victory lane with our favorite combined bet. And this is the 4th outright I bet in the Action Network app. You're on this one too. You said this is your favorite one of the group as well, Stevie. What is it?
Yeah, it's Eric Jones. I mean, we're talking about a guy that has a win at Daytona. We're talking about a guy that's finished inside the top 5 4 or 5 times at Daytona and Talladega and been in contention to win many of these races. And we're talking about a driver that has already shown us that, like, he doesn't care about saving fuel. He goes and tries to drive up towards the front. They want to run up front. So all of the stats that we look at with this next gen car at super speedway races, he's up towards the top, and we're getting him at 45-1. You know, you and I are big components of average running position with the next gen car. Where are they running with the type of car with this car? Makes so much more sense. So I think when you're looking at this, I think that you have to have some shots on Eric Jones because he's below the cutoff line. He's going to be aggressive. We don't really know where the focus is going to be. So he could kind of just do his own thing. I mean, there's no Eric Jones is not going to push Ty Gibbs to a win. I mean, Eric Jones is not going to push Tyler Reddick to a win. So, I mean, when we were talking about, taking a long shot bet, because we love long shot bets for our victory lane for Daytona Talladega. And I was just like, yeah, Eric Jones is my favorite. He's shown that he can win this racetrack, and he doesn't have to help anybody. He's going to go out and try to win this race.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you. Eric Jones took him really early in the week when he opened at 60-1. Took him there. 45-1. Still love that price. I mean, we're talking about a driver who, especially in the first year or two of the next gen car, was kind of dominant at these tracks. Even if he wasn't leading, he was in that lead group quite a bit. As maybe I wouldn't say fallen off a little bit, but just everybody's equalized. But if everybody's equalized and you're still in the better half of the field, and there's 40 cars, then you should be better than 40-1. So yeah, I like Eric Jones 45-1. I think he is very motivated. I mean, if you even just look at his Twitter today or yesterday, I believe it was, he's like, how can I not take this beautiful number 43 STP Toyota? I keep thinking Chevy back in the day from when, RPM was in the Chevy, Richard Petty Motorsports. But that number 43 Toyota into victory lane at Daytona. So I think he's super motivated, wants to get into the playoffs and put a beautiful car in victory lane. So that is going to do it for the Coke Zero Sugar 400 episode of Running Hot, Action Network's Motorsports Betting Podcast. If you'd like to tail some of the bets we discussed today, look for the quick slip link in the podcast and video description, or go to actionnetwork.com/bet now. We'll be back next week to talk bets for the Southern 500 at Darlington Raceway to kick off the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. On behalf of my co-host, Stephen Young, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you back here next week on Running Hot from Action Network.